Cindric, who you look at their profiles, and I think those are guys that are ready to make the step up to the Monster Energy Cup Series within the next year or two. I can't say that about any of the drivers currently in Indy Lights at this point, Tom.
Well, no, absolutely. Matthew, Steve, let's get your thoughts on that. We see a lot of Xfinity series, and we know that there's other developmental series that you may want to talk about with NASCAR, but it feels like we're not seeing as much Xfinity series. What are your thoughts on that? We'll get into the Kansas storylines. Go ahead, sir.
I think it goes back to exactly what I was saying earlier about the fact of TV partners. These, aside from Daytona and maybe one or other two races down the line, these have all been put on FS1. This is a channel that if you don't have a cable subscription or satellite subscription or one of the new streaming packages from the various providers that provide FS1, you've kind of been locked out in the fact of, not seeing these truck races and not seeing these Xfinity Series races. And I think it kind of, at the same time, it hurts, it hurts the TV viewership that is potentially tuning in. Last night was a great race to watch, a truck series event. Unfortunately, it's a Friday night. It's during prime time. And again, just like TV works, Fox couldn't open up a spot on their broadcast television to slide that in there. I mean, it was unfortunately put on FS1. And sometimes, we hear it covering NASCAR all the time. I would love to be able to see that race, but unfortunately I don't have either the TV package or I don't have the streaming package, or maybe I've just totally cut the cord and I have an antenna in my house, so, I didn't get to see it. So I have to, wait until later on and read about it or watch it on, YouTube. Sometimes these, NASCAR will put these races out on YouTube for people to watch. Or maybe people just, tune into MRN, for that. So, I think it just comes back to the fact that, is there a fine balance somewhere for this? I don't know, because I'm not a TV person. I can't control the TV, but, we hear it all the time from lots of different people, about these various regular series that are lower than a Cup Series, and they're not always put on accessible television, and, it's just the nature of the beast sometimes, and, we can't fault the TV partners. You can't fault NASCAR. It's just how it all works out, unfortunately, and, while we would like it all to be on, television that everybody can watch every single week, it's just not possible.
No, I agree. I'm a cord cutter myself, but I'm still connected. And my Apple TV, that's the best investment that anybody can make. I mean, because if you've got an Apple phone, if you've got the ability to stream it on your phone, you can stream it on your Apple TV, and it's there. You don't have to worry about the rabbit ears or whatever. So, yeah, the little selfless promotion for them, and maybe they'll give me some advertising dollars. But, yeah, there's all kinds of easy ways to watch races if you want to. I think maybe it comes down to the actual want to, because it is so easy to stream anything that you want to watch these days, whether it be on your phone, your tablet, your iPad, or what I do is I just stream it and cast it onto my Apple TV, and there it is. So it's real easy to do, but maybe people just don't want to be that connected, and so it is what it is. We could have that discussion all day long. We talked about Kyle Busch not being the storyline of the truck race, Steve, but he's still going to be a storyline at Kansas. Kyle Busch likes himself some Kansas. Yes, you are back in Kansas. I was trying to find the Wizard of Oz comparison there, but just couldn't make it happen. But maybe a lot of people think that people want a house to fall on Kyle Busch. I knew I'd get there. I got there. Kyle Busch obviously has a great history there at Kansas, Steve.
Yeah, it does. And, starting position sometimes really doesn't mean anything in this sport, especially for Kyle Busch. I don't know. How many times have we seen him start at the back, go to the back, whatever the case may be, and work his way all the way to the front and end up winning these events? So, this is spread across all three national series with him. He's not done it once or twice or even a half a dozen times. I mean, he's done this on many, many occasions. So, for a driver, I think, sometimes I think, to be honest with you, and this is just my personal opinion, this isn't a fact in any means. Sometimes I think that Kyle Busch just likes to start further down in the field to see just how competitive he can be and kind of see if he can work himself out of that hole. And that's just kind of my perception of this. And, again, it's not a fact. Nobody has ever said that to me. I just think sometimes he likes to do this, to toy with the field to some degree. And while there are tracks out there that, he's just traditionally not very good at. He never has had good starting positions, never had good finishing positions. But I think there's just tracks that sometimes I just think that he does it to toy with the field and give people something to talk about. And that's just kind of my personal opinion on that. Is Kansas a place that he would risk doing that? I don't necessarily think so. It's hard to pass at Kansas. Even with the new packages, I think that we're going to see some spread out racing, and we're going to see cars seconds apart. Clean air is going to continue to be a factor all night long in this race as we go from dusk to nighttime, even with some rain maybe factored in at some point. I think it's a tough place to pass sometimes. And starting deep in the field is not really a place you want to toy with the field to some degree. But, I think that, again, maybe I think for him, I don't think it really matters. But, yes, he's going to be strong tonight. We're going to talk about him at some point. And if you had to put him on a short list of 1 or 2 or 3, you'd probably want to put him on that list for sure.
Matthew, certainly we're familiar with his brother Kurt on the IndyCar side. Obviously, did the double a few years back. But the Busch brothers, you either love or hate them. There's no going in between. The fans either hate the Busch brothers or they absolutely love the Busch brothers. There is no in between ground there with them. But what are your thoughts, Kyle Busch, Kansas? Kyle Busch is just a dominating force in NASCAR, stock car, is certainly the truck series, won more truck races than anybody in history. What are your thoughts on Kyle Busch? And then we'll get into some of these storylines and starting lineup guys. But go ahead, Matthew.
And yet, despite that, he only has 1 series championship next to his name. I still think he needs to win a couple more championships. All the race wins, they're great, but they don't mean much if you don't win titles. And I think that's the one thing that you're going to look at with Kyle Busch is what if he had won and had the same kind of commitment through an entire season. I think he would have more than just 1 series title next to his name at this point of his career.
Steve, let's talk a little bit about the track at Kansas. It's a fast track. I like it. It's also a track where the wall likes to kiss you. And Kyle Larson and Bowman both had some makeout sessions in practice there at Kansas. Talk with us a little bit about the track at Kansas.
Well, the track continues to age. It becomes more porous as it's continued to age. In the Midwest, the sun that has beat down onto it. The tires are going to be a concern, and we're going to see tires potentially blow. We saw this last night in the Truck Series race. There were tires that were not through contact, just blew out in the race. Now, it's not as prevalent as a place like Atlanta that we go to, and that track is just really just tore up and really old and 20-plus years on a racing surface. But tires are going to continue to be a concern all night long, and that's how you get these drivers, especially drivers like Kyle Larson, who loves to run just inches away off the wall. And maybe that he does that because if the tire blows, it's not as hard of a hit if you're running on the bottom. But, it's a potential for disaster. And, Kyle Larson has joked about this on several occasions over the last couple of weeks about how often he's crashing and how he would like to turn this thing around. And he even joked about it yesterday in the fact that he said something about his harness, his harness device. Somebody asked a question about that, and he made a joke about he uses a different style version than many other people, and it's worked out great for him because he crashes a lot. So again, we hopefully Carl Larson will turn the tide shortly. And again, I think Chip Ganassi, if they can, Kyle Larson is a great race car driver. He just needs some. I guess he needs to temper it down because I think he's still used to running some of those sprint cars. Like you run a sprint car, you can't really necessarily do that with a stock car sometimes, and maybe that's why he hasn't gone to victory lane as many times as we would like to see him go to victory lane. But it's going to be a concern. I think there's other concerns. Like I said, I've been pointing out that there's weather in the area that may potentially impact the race. We got a good chance to get this race in, but if not. We're going to see a whole lot of drivers scurrying around and doing a whole lot of crazy things that we wouldn't normally see them to get in position, providing that we can make it to the second stage tonight.
Well, it's the Digital Alley 400 at Kansas. The Kansas Speedway is the next spot for the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. Saturday night races. You got time to watch the IndyCar Grand Prix and then get on over to MRN, Sirius XM, NASCAR Radio, FS1, all of those are where you can find it at with plenty of action on the track, and we'll certainly be following the Speedway Digest as well. So let's talk a little bit. Matthew, go ahead. Feel free to chime in. Ask. We'll just kind of have some open dialogue here. Matthew, feel free to ask Steve anything about NASCAR. Steve, feel free to ask Matthew anything about IndyCar. But go ahead, Matthew. You are up on the docket, sir.
Couple of the new drivers obviously trying to fill the field. For those of people, how about Bailey Curry and Quinn Hoff? Where do they come from, the couple of new guys that have joined the grid here the last couple of weeks?
So Quinn Hoff is from my state in Virginia, and he's been a late model driver around here for quite some time. He's been off and on through the National Series events. Excuse me again. He's been in the 3 National Series events over the last couple of years. He's never really had anything full-time or any competitive. He's going to be, Spire Motorsports, who bought out an existing charter last year on an auction, has been fielding this number 77 car. They've been fielding different drivers throughout, the year because the charter requires that they field a car in every single event. And that's why we're seeing some drivers that, are necessarily not as competitive because they don't have the funding behind them, or they just they've just never been very competitive, but they need somebody in that car. And at this point, they're trying to build this team, and they're trying to build this team through the ways many other teams have gone through this, by bringing in unnamed, unknown drivers. Sometimes these are drivers that don't have a very long racing resume of full-time racing, but fill in, here and there, and, get a car sometimes to the finish. And when they don't, it's usually because of mechanical issues. And, that's what we're seeing a lot with Bailey Curry, with Quinn Hoff. Both of them, fielding that 77 car this year at various different points. And, hopefully that they turn the page. Hopefully that those guys invest some more money into it, because, we having a chartered vehicle like that running around sometimes 15, 20, 30 laps down, way off pace last week. That car with Quinn Hoff in the car was parked because of speed issues. They couldn't maintain speed. But, that's kind of where we're seeing some of the drivers, like you're talking about, Bailey Curry and Quinn Hoff, coming from right now.
And how is the thing right now? We talked about the charter being a bugaboo for thing. How about the non-chartered entry? Has there still been an increased interest from teams that are unwilling to, cough up the cash for a charter to participate and possibly enter events?
In some events, yes. We're seeing this in the Daytona 500. We'll probably see this in the Coca-Cola 600, and some of these other events that pay decent amounts of money. That a team can go out there, field a car, and not necessarily lose any money, not necessarily make a whole lot of money either. Just because the way the structure is of the charters, they have a bigger piece of the pie, regardless of where they finish But, we've seen car counts down in the Cup Series.